Hi, hello Year 10 students. This is video 6 for Algebra. Today we are going to learn something new, which is Monic quadratic trinomial. Okay, so what do we mean by a Monic quadratic trinomial? Okay, the first word is Monic. Monic means the coefficient in front of the x squared is 1. Okay, so you see the x squared, there's no number in front of it, that means 1. Okay, and quadratic means you see x squared and sometimes you got x. Okay, quadratic means you see the x squared and also x. Trinomial means 3 terms. Okay, so all these things are technical definition of what we are doing for today. So our task is to do this. Previously, we have learned how to do the expanding from 2 brackets. Okay, so for example, we have learned from bracket x plus 3, bracket x plus 7, we expanded into the expanded form. Of course, you have to do the simplification as well. All right, and the problem is, how could we do it on from the other side? For example, if you are given x squared plus 10x plus 21, how could you get back to bracket x plus 3 times x plus 7? How could we do that? That process is called factorizing. Okay, you need to factorize, make them into the factor form. There are 2 factors. Okay, so we're going to learn that. Okay, okay, so first we consider the case 1. Okay, case 1, both b and c are positive, so b is the middle number, c is the constant, which is the last number, right? Okay, so both b and c are positive, means both the middle number and the number at the end both are positive. For example, we have x squared plus 8x plus 12 here, plus 8 plus 12, both are positive. How could we factorize this one? Okay, so there are a few steps you need to understand, and you need to understand why we are going to do this. And then after you understand the idea, it will be easier for you to memorize. Okay, that's my idea. Okay, let's see. Step 1, you need to find a pair of factors of c, which is 12. Okay, until the sum of the 2 factors equal b. Okay, so you need a pair of factors of c, and you need to find the sum of the 2 factors. Okay, so you need to think about, for 12, how could we get 2 numbers multiply together to get 12? Okay, the most obvious choice would be 1 times 12. Okay, but you need to satisfy the second condition, which is the sum of the 2 factors equals b. Okay, so you need to add the 2 numbers you've chosen to see if they really equal to the middle number. In this case, is 8. Okay, let's see. If I got 12, if I take 12 equals 1 times 12, right? But 1 plus 12 is 13, it's not 8. Okay, so that means the first 12 is wrong. Okay, the second one, for 12, of course, we could think about 3 times 4. Okay, but that's not enough. You need to check whether 3 plus 4 is 7. Is 8. 3 plus 4 is 7, which is very close to 8, but it isn't 8. Alright, so again, this fails. Okay, the third trial, the third attempt, we think that 12 as 2 times 6 And then we check whether 2 plus 6 is 8. Yes. Okay. So all these things are what we call trial and error. Okay, you need to try. Okay, of course, after some time, you might not need to write all the thing. You just can do some mental math. 12, if I use 1 times 12, 1 plus 12 is not 8, so that's not the choice. So actually, when you're doing exercise, when you're doing that in the examination, okay, then you should have been very familiar with the skills. At that time, you don't need to write all the things, but right now we're still learning, so I'm going to show you the full picture. Okay, so how special is that choice? That's you got 2 times 6 equal 12, and you got 2 plus 6 equal to 8. So 2 and 6 are 2 very special number. Okay, so how could you use these 2 number? Okay, so that would be our next step. Use the 2 qualified factors. Qualified because they satisfy the above conditions. So they are qualified factors to separate bx into the sum of the 2 terms. Okay, so you need to separate, that's the middle term. In this case, you need to separate that ax, okay, the one that I've just underlined, into 2x plus 6x. Do you see that? So where comes that 2? Where comes that 6? That's 2 and 6 comes from here. Alright, 2 and 6 comes from here and also here. Okay, so that's why you need to find the 2 numbers, because you need to separate that ax by using that 2 numbers. Ax equals 2x plus 6. Imagine if you don't use 2 and 6, use 3 and 4, does it work? Okay, let's think. If the 2 number you choose were 3 and 4, so what happened? Then can you separate that ax into 3x plus 4x? Of course no. Okay, because 3x plus 4x is 7x, is not ax. Okay, so that's why it's very important. You need to check whether the 2 numbers, when they added together, will give you the middle term. Because you need to use that 2 numbers as 2 factors to separate, the sum of the 2 terms to separate that ax. Okay, so that's why you have to check whether the sum is the middle term. Okay, so after this, why this is important, we have 2x and 6x. Let's see, after you have 2x, 6x, how many terms now? You got 4 terms. Still remember last video we've learned, if you got 4 terms, let's do some rearrangement or grouping. Okay, we got 2 terms a group, there are 2 groups. Okay, and for those 2 groups, you could get the common factor out of each pair of terms. Okay, so you could further factorize this. Okay, let's see what happened. You got 4 terms, and then for the first 2 terms, you will have x. You take out x because x is common factor. You got x taken out, s being taken out, and the bracket x plus 2 because the first 2 terms. Okay, let me highlight that to you. Here's the first 2 terms. For the first 2 terms, okay, it just become x times bracket x plus 2. Okay, for the second pair of terms, 6x plus 12. Okay, you got this one. Okay, so you see, after you got two terms and you got both of them factorized by certain common factors, then you will see a pair of common binomial factor. Do we see a pair of binomial factors? Yes, that's bracket x plus 2. Okay, so still remember in last video, if you got four terms, you got two groups, and for each group, after you take out the common factor, you will see two binomials. Okay, and that's two binomial terms in the bracket must be the same, otherwise something wrong. Okay, so now you got x plus 2 as and x plus 2 as the only common factor of the two terms. So you can take that x plus 2 outside and leave behind x and 6 in the bracket. So that's why we've done the factorization. Okay, so you see it's not that easy. It's a complex procedure, right? So let me show you again what we have done. Okay, first you look at the last number, which is 12. Then you need to find a product of two factors, which will give you 12. 1 times 12, 3 times 4, 2 times 6. These are some of the combinations. But then you need to check whether the two numbers you choose, when you add them, they will give you the middle term. Okay, if not, then you need to go to the next one until you got the sum of the two numbers give you the number of the middle terms. Okay, then you could use that two numbers to separate the middle term. After you separate the middle term, it becomes a 4 terms polynomial. There are 4 terms in the polynomial. And then you can do grouping. You can do factorization by grouping. Okay, you could group the first two as one pair, the second two, the last two terms as the other pair, and then you just take out the common factor. All right. After you take out the common factor, you will see two common binomial factors, and you do further factorization. Then you do it. So it's a lot of steps. All right. Okay. Okay. So let's see this one. X squared plus 5x plus 6. Okay. Let's think about the possibility of the factors of 6. Okay. So 6 could be 1 times 6, and 1 plus 6 is 7. Okay, it's not 5, not the middle term, so we call but. Okay, so that means 1 times 6 fails. How about the other one? 1 and 2, right? 2 times what? 2 times 3. Okay. And you try 2 plus 3. Is 2 plus 3 equal 5? Yes. Okay. So we know the two important numbers are 2 and 3 in this question. So let's move on to factorize the expression. Okay. Remember that 5x need to be separated into two terms such that we can do the grouping and factorize them. Okay, for 5x, we're going to do 2x plus 3x. We separate that 5x into 2x plus 3x plus 6. Okay, and then there are 4 terms, so you can group them. How could you group them? All right. The first two as one group, the second pair, the last 2 terms as the other group. Okay, so let's see x squared plus 2x. Alright, so you got x as common factor For 3x plus 6, okay, so we take 3 out of the bracket. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Okay, right, do you see any common factor, a new pair of common factor? Yes. So see, x plus 2 brackets now the common factor, as we have learned that before. Okay, so what we're going to do, you take out, that's x plus 2. Okay, so it's in the form of the product of two binomial brackets. That would be normally the case. All right, so like the previous example, all right, you got two brackets. Okay, for part B, I'm going to give you some time to try, because that's 24 is really tricky. There are lots of combination, right? Okay, I'm going to give you some time to try. Okay, I just show you the steps for choosing the proper pair of numbers which can be used to separate the 10x. Okay, so there are lots of combination of factors for 24. You got 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6. Among all of them, only one pair could, when they added together, they will give the sum, which is the middle, the number, the coefficient of the middle term, which is 10. Okay, so the only possibility is when 24 equals 4 times 6, and at the same time 4 plus 6 is 10. Okay, so this would be, okay, so sorry, the first one is not good. Okay, so the last one works. Okay, since the last one works, so the special numbers, okay, is 4 and 6. All right, so that's why when you see 10x, you separate that 10x into 4 and 6. Then what happens? Okay, then you need to group them. Okay, the first pair, second pair. Okay, for the first pair, you could take x out of the bracket. For the second, is 6. Okay, because we know that 24 is 6 times 4. You could always try to think about this simple, very simple multiplication. Yeah. Okay, so that's why 6 is the common factor to be taken out. Okay, now, okay, so this is a important stage. You see both bracket, you got the same x plus 4. Okay, so that's why you might take x plus 4 out, and you got x plus 6 being left behind. Okay, so that would be our work for this, the most basic monic quadratic trinomial. Okay, right, so let's, because they are all positive, so it's always addition. Then we are going to see something. So here's practice 1, sorry. So practice 1. Okay, so here's my practice 1. Okay, so you got the answer just underneath, right? And then I got another one, which is this time b is negative but c is positive. That means the last number is negative. Is positive, but the middle number is negative. In this case, what happens, which becomes different to from the previous example? First, you need to come up with, okay, what happens? I can't change color, I'm sorry. Okay, right, you need to find a pair of negative, which is very important. Okay, I will show you why it must be negative. Okay, so when you consider 6, you could consider 1 times 6, but this time you need to consider minus 1 times minus 6. Why you have to use minus? Okay, because it's the only possibility if you got two negative number multiplied together equal to positive, and the sum of that two negative number could be negative. Sorry, it must be negative, right? So if the middle term, the number in the middle term is negative, okay, and you got the sum of 6, okay, sorry, the product, a pair of numbers whose product is 6, then this pair must be negative. Otherwise, the sum of this pair can't be negative. Okay, so that's why you have to consider negative factors rather than positive factors of the last term 6, and then you add them up to see if the two numbers you choose could give you the sum which equals the middle term. No. No. Okay. Okay, then you need to consider whether, okay, 6, if we use 2 times 3, of course it's 6, but since the middle term is negative, you need to have two negative number. That would be minus 2 times minus 3. Still you got 6, but this minus 2 plus minus 3, of course minus 2 plus minus 3 becomes minus 2 minus 3, which could give you minus 5, and minus 5 is the middle term. So that only happens if you use two negative number, right? But of course it's not any pair of negative numbers. It must be from the factors of 6. Okay, and then step 2, use the two qualified factor to separate bx in the sum of two negative terms. Okay, in the sum of two negative terms. Okay, let's see. Alright, so I know the two special numbers minus 2 minus 3, so I'm going to separate that's minus 5x in terms of minus 2x minus 3x. So minus 2 minus 3 is minus, right? Okay, plus 6. Okay, and then what happens here? Oh, I think there's something wrong here. So this is redundant. Okay, sorry. Okay, so this one's redundant. I need to copy here. I need to do here. Actually, I mean this one. Okay, equals. Oh, sorry about this. Okay, sorry. Okay, and we know that they are equal, right? Okay, so you need to separate that's minus 5x into minus 2x minus 3x. Okay, and then it would be possible for you to factorize. Okay, so remember when you got 4 terms, from 3 terms to 4 terms, now you got 4 terms, then you can do the group. Okay, you got 2 groups. First 2 terms, 1 group. Okay, so let's emphasize the first 2 terms, 1 group, the next 2 terms, another group. Of course, when you factorize, when you group the last 2 terms, because you got minus sign outside, so you have to change the sign for everything in the bracket. So minus 3x becomes 3, and that's positive 6 becomes minus 6, and you take out that's 3 as common factor. Okay, after doing that, you will see 2 binomials which are identical, so they becomes a common factor. Alright, so what you need to do now is to taking out that common factor which is x minus 2, and what left behind will be x minus 3, right? Okay, oh, possibly for this one I might change the order a little bit to make it easier for you to understand. Actually they are the same, but I would still like to change that a little bit, because you can see now I take x minus 2 out, I got x minus 3 next to it. Okay, so that's for the middle term negative and last term positive. Remember, when you got that kind of combination, you need to find two negative factors for the last number. Alright. Okay, so possibly time for some exercise. Okay, so let's see, minus x squared minus 4x plus 3. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, so if I'm going to do it, I'm going to use blue color. Okay, so let's think about 3. What factors can we have 3 equals? Because the middle term is negative, you times 1 times 3, right? Minus 1 times minus 3. Okay, and minus 1 plus minus 3. That means minus 1 minus 3. That's minus 4. Okay, so it works, because the sum of the two numbers, which are factors of 3, equals the middle term. Okay, so let's do the factorization. We need to separate that. Or possibly it would be too small. I need to amplify this a little bit. Okay, so here's the question. The two special numbers, minus 1 and minus 3. Okay, so let's separate minus 4x into minus 1x and minus 3x plus 3. Okay, so then we need to group them. How can we group them? The first pair is one group. Okay, the second pair, I'm going to leave that minus sign outside. Okay, good. And then you will have something like you need to take that x out. Okay, for the two terms here, you need to take 3 out, and you got x minus 1 as common factor. And here's the answer, right? Okay, good. Right. Okay, make sure you understand how can you find two negative numbers, which the product equals the last term, the sum equals the middle term. Okay, so let's do B. I'm going to give you some time to do B, right? Think about this. Okay. Okay, so that what you should see. Okay, so you need to find a pair of number that product is 24, and the pair of factors you choose must be negative, because the middle term is negative. Alright, so you've got minus 1 times minus 24, but of course when they add together, minus 25 is not minus 11. Minus 2 times minus 12 also give you 24, but minus 2 minus 12 is not minus 11, it's minus 14. Minus 3 times minus 8, yes, it's 24, and also minus 3 minus 8 equals minus 11. So that means minus 3 and minus 8 is a pair of qualified factors. Okay, so then you separate that minus 11x into minus 3x minus 8x. You group them into two groups. Alright, for the first pair, you just take that x out. For this one, for the next pair, take that 8 out. Okay, right, so remember ax minus 24 is not plus anymore, because you understand that when you add a bracket and you got minus sign outside, you have to change the sign inside. Alright, so then the common factor becomes x minus 3. Okay, so that's how you get the answer. Alright, well, good. And the last one could be quite difficult because that's 56. You got lots of combination. So you need to think about. Sometimes we need to do some mental math with. Right. So of course, are we going to track -1 times -56? Of course not, because if you got -1 times -56, of course it equals 56. But -1 minus 56 is far away from that's -15, right? So we are not going to track -1 times -56. So how about 2 times 28? Okay, so if that's -2 minus 28 times together equal to 56, but when they add them together, it's not. Okay, so basically these two numbers, they're quite far away. So let's start with 4. How about that? Alright, so if we start by 4, okay, like, okay, let's say 56 equals -4 minus 14, right? Okay, and -4 minus 14, which is -18, is quite close, but it's not the case. Okay, so it's still not -15. So this is not this pair not qualified. But okay, let's say 4 is a factor of 56. How about 5? 5 is not. How about 6? Is 6 a factor? No. 7. Yes, 7. Okay, so -7 minus 8 and -7 minus 8 and -15. So this time it works. Okay, so the qualified pair will be -7 and -8. So that's what you're going to do. Okay, so I just strictly separate that's -15 into these two. Okay, and the first pair and the second pair, change the sign because you got negative sign outside. Take x out for the first factor, the second factor. Okay, so that's what you should see. You should see the pair of common binomial. Alright, so x take 7. Okay, that will do it. You see the answer, right? Okay, so that's how we do the questions when you got middle term negative but the last term positive. So for both the case 1 and case 2, you see the last number is positive. The only difference is the middle number could be positive or negative. Okay, so how about last case, which is case 3? Okay, so in case 3, this time we consider when the last number c is negative. That means the constant term is negative. Okay, you see here, last term is negative. So how could we do this? Okay, first you need to think about how could we find a pair of number when they multiply together, they will give you a negative product. It must be one positive and one negative, right? Okay, so that's why in this case, because the last number, I mean the constant term, is negative, so you need to have a positive factor and a negative factor, right? So the problem is which one. So if you got two numbers multiplied together equals 10, then you need to, in addition, to consider which one is negative. So it depends on the experience. All right. Okay. So let's see. minus 10, we could write minus 1. Okay, let's highlight the positions of that subtraction sign. Okay, you got minus 1 times 10, or you got 1 times minus 10. So there are two possibilities. But when they add them together, you see minus 1 plus 10, or no, 1 times minus 10. No, both of them are not going to be close to minus 3. Okay, how about this one? Minus 2 times 5. Okay, it's minus 10. But when you add them together, minus 2 plus 5 is plus. So, but it's very close. It's plus. Okay, so how could you make a plus 3 into minus 3? The reason is you could put that minus sign on 5 rather than on 2. Right? So still 2 times minus 5 still negative, but this time when you add them together, you have 2 minus 5, which is, oh okay, sorry about the typo, which is minus 3. Okay, so that's what you've got. Okay, so then we could separate that x squared minus 3x minus 10 into 2x minus 5x. Okay, now you see that? That's 2, that's minus 5. So that's 2, that's minus 5. Okay, right? So 2 minus 5, 2x minus 5x is minus 3x. Alright, so again, you create 4 terms now, and from these 4 terms, you could group then the first 2 as one group, the last 2 as the other group, and you take out their common factors, and upon here you will see a pair of common binomial terms. Okay, so that pair will become the common the HCF here, and you got the red sort of thing in the bracket. Yeah, that's how we do it. Okay, so let's see this one. Okay, so for this one, you see, for all this set of questions, okay, the last number is negative. Okay, x squared minus 9x minus 10. Okay, so let's think about minus 10. Remember now it's minus 10, so you must have one positive, one negative, right? So let's say I got minus 1 times 10. Okay, so it's minus 1 plus 10. We need to check whether it equals the middle term. It's not, but it's quite close. Okay, so we still say but. Okay, it's 9, so it's not negative 9. We need negative 9. Okay, alright, so how about next trial? Okay, this time I consider time times minus 1. Okay, and this time you will see, okay, 10 minus 1 equals 9. Oh, sorry, I got something wrong. Okay, take too long. Okay, it should be like this. Sorry about that. Forget that. Okay, it should be 1 times minus 10. Okay, so this time we got plus minus 10. Okay, 1 plus minus 10. That means 1 minus 10. 1 minus 10 is minus 9. Okay, so the second trial works. Okay, so the two special number here is 1 and minus 10, because when they add them together, they will give you minus 9. That's what we want. Okay, so let's separate the 9x into plus x, 1x if you like, minus 10x. Okay, so 1x minus 10x, is it minus 9x? Yes. So let's keep it. Okay, remember the first two terms, you could always group them. For the next two terms, be careful, you need to change the sign, because there's a negative sign here. Alright, so let's take out the common factor, of course, here, x, it's quite obvious. Here's 10, quite obvious. Alright, so you got both, you got x plus 1. Okay, since we've done this many times, I'm going to be pretty fast now. Okay, so that's for the first one. Okay, see that? Alright, so we're going to do another one, which you got last digit negative, but this time the middle one is positive. But we are going to still use the same technique, right? So think about minus 20. Okay, so of course, so you might think about 1 times 20, right? But if 1 times 20, for example, you've got minus 1, 20, it should be 19 when you add them together, right? So we are not going to try, because just from our inspection, just for our mental math, we understand that's 20 times 1, 20 times minus 1 or minus 20 times 1 would be too far away from the middle term, because the middle term only x, that means there should be a 1 here. So 20 and 1 can't get you to have that 1x. How about 10 times 2? Okay, so if you got minus 2 times 10, okay, then when you add them, it's equals 8, so it's still far away. So 2 times 10 doesn't work. How about 4 times 5? Okay, let's try. That's minus 20. Let's try. Okay, minus 5 times 4. Does it work? Okay, you need to add them. Okay, it's minus 1, but the middle term here should be plus 1. So that means it doesn't fulfill the requirement that the sum must be equals positive 1. Okay, so this one doesn't work. How about the second one? Okay, second one, we need to swap that minus sign, because you still need to 1 positive, 1 minus. But this time you got 5 plus minus 1, minus 4, sorry, plus minus 4 is plus 4, right? Sorry, it's plus 1, okay, it's plus 1, okay, so it's correct. So say n. Alright, so let's try to group them, okay, by using these two numbers, 5 and minus 4. Okay, so we have x squared plus 5x minus 4x minus 20. Okay, so and the first pair you have x plus 5. Okay, and for the second pair, of course I possibly should bracket. It should be like this. Sorry about that. I might need to go back. Yes, because I'm a little bit too tired. The time is now 11:50. Oh my goodness. I'm not going to die from the coronavirus. I'm going to die from the overworking. Okay, that's a joke. Right, okay, so are you going to take out 4? Yeah, they're the same. Let me make it really quick. Alright, so that's it. Okay, you got another one. Done. Alright, so I need to give you some time to do these two. Alright, okay. Okay, so here you are. You got the answer, right? So let's check. First pair, you need to find a pair of 3 times 8 equal 24. But since the middle term is negative, you need to put the negative sign on the bigger number. Alright, so then you got 3 times negative 8, and 3 minus negative 8 will be minus 5. So the pair of number you need is 3 and minus x. So that's why minus 5x becomes 3x minus 8x. And then you group them, you're taking out common factor. You got common binomials as common factor. So you just take that common binomial term, binomial out, and you got x minus 8. Right. So the other one, possibly you have done many times until you got 4 and 16. Yeah. So I just give you the answer. All right. So I do the easier job. Okay. And so that's how it is. Right. Okay. Good. If you got both of them correct, then congratulations. Alright, if not, that's okay. You just might need to spend more time to watch some details from the video again. That's the advantage of having video. Okay, so here's more practices for you to do. Alright. Okay, that's for today's video. See you next time.